Well, hello and welcome once again to Terry and Olly Talk Teaching with me, Terry Wood, here in London, and my good friend and former colleague, Olly Furnival, over in lovely Japan. How's it going, Olly?
Good evening. Yes, good, thank you. It's warming up here in Japan. I think the cherry blossom is about a week away. It's
Oh, yeah.
actually sprouting up early this year. So, yeah, it's warm. It's one of those weird times of year where it's colder in the house than outside. But,
Yeah,
yeah, all
yeah.
good. All good, thanks,
We've got our
mates.
cherry. Ours isn't quite the same as yours, obviously, but we've got our cherry blossom. Doesn't last very long, but we've got it.
Lovely. No, it doesn't
Anyway,
it
look,
only last a week here. Yeah,
yeah, it's quick, isn't it? But it's very nice over
yeah,
there. I mean, it's a huge thing over there, isn't it? Huge
yeah.
cultural and photographers from
Certainly
all
is.
over the world descend on Japan for a
They
week,
do.
don't they? Right, what
Yeah.
we're going to do today is all about citizenship, which is to some extent still a niche area of the educational system, particularly in secondary school. And there's nobody, and therefore some teachers and people thinking of going into teaching might be saying, "What's that all about? I'm quite interested in that. Can I get involved in that? I've got some knowledge and interest in that area." And the reason for my questions coming to you is that you're the best person I can think of to remotely talk about this. You are probably citizenships, in my experience, greatest exponent and proponent that I met in my career. The first person really 20 years ago or so who was delivering it as a discrete subject and clearly lived and breathed it, whilst I think others kind of looked askance at it as what's this new thing? Why should
Sure.
we
You
bother
weren't alone.
citizenship? So the first
Yeah.
question, so nobody better. The first question would be just a brief potted history of how you got involved in being a citizenship teacher. Where did that all come from at that time?
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Yes, and I'm really pleased that this is a topic today because, as you say, something I don't teach it now in Japan, but
Yeah,
still, looking back on my career, it's what I've been most passionate about. So, I was I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I actually wanted to be a history teacher when I was at school. I was one of those kids that always wanted to be a teacher, did A-level history, etc. But I went on, did politics at university, and then
yeah,
I was teaching out in Japan, just English as a second language. Just wanted to travel the world, and then I always knew I was going to come back and teach. And when I did start thinking about coming back to teach, I thought, well, it's better, to link it to my degree. And when I got it, the earlier days of the internet, we're talking I started thinking about moving back in around 2000, 2001 time. And I heard about this brand new subject, citizenship,
yeah,
which really kind of lit my passion in what I wanted to do as a teacher. Because the key thing about citizenship is it's not just knowledge, but it's also making students live the knowledge and making students take part in society. So citizenship itself came out from it was one of the New Labour's ideas. I think David Blunkett was a big proponent of it, and he pushed
probably
James
about
C. Bernard.
97, 98 onwards. Then it was started to be
Yep,
talked about. Yeah, yeah,
yep. And I mean, there's always been, like, if you like, social studies, some
yeah,
kind of form of politics being
yeah.
taught, but in its guise of citizenship, the big report was the Crick report. Bernard Crick unfortunately
All right.
died
Yeah, yeah.
about 10 years later or so of cancer, and he was like, I think I've read that Blunkett was his student, maybe at university. Anyway, he
No,
wrote
I
a
know,
government
yeah, yeah.
report.
I think that's probably true. Yeah, I think I've heard that
Yeah,
story. Yeah,
he wrote a government report, and it went through, and it made it that citizenship is all about, the big three things were social and moral responsibility,
yeah.
political literacy, and community involvement. And following on from that, it became a statutory subject from the academic year of 2002. So I became a trainee teacher in September 2002, the same year that the first year citizenship was being rolled out. So I was like the second cohort of student teachers. So yes, I actually did my PGCE in secondary citizenship education at the Institute of Education. It was the University of London then, now UCL. And the course is still going very strong in their like 25th, 26th year now, on the new year coming up, of teachers like me going into citizenship education. And yeah, it became a statutory subject, so it should be taught, what that means, obviously, across all subjects in schools in England. And when I came in, my friends that before I'd even got a job, friends who were teachers were saying, "Oh, this is the buzzword. This is a new big thing, citizenship." It's probably obviously being thrown at every meeting. You'd have been a teacher at the time, so I thought at the time, "Oh, well, this is the next big thing." We might come to later how it hasn't quite turned out that way. As you say, many people might not even a quarter of a century later know what the subject is. I've only taught in 2 different schools in England, and both of them had citizenship as a discrete subject. One with you, where I actually started it. I joined that school as a trainee teacher, and the school, thankfully for me, really said, "Right, go with it." And we went from key stage 3 up to having the full GCSE in it. And also the second school I worked at had one of its citizenship was one of the 5 pillars, and it went from year 7 all the way through the 6th form as citizenship a big part of the school. So I've been very lucky in my career. But I know I was told, that although it was the new big thing, it was still a new subject. So us new citizenship teachers had to do second subjects. We were advised to, and I went to history, and I ended up teaching RE and geography, obviously in the same school, obviously humanities. But citizenship was the big thing about really getting students to understand how the UK is governed, because they all live there. They're soon, or they are taxpayers. Some of them, old enough, up to 6th form, to get married, have children still at school, but the idea was for them to develop a knowledge of the country, of the law, of their rights, getting them involved in things like community projects, volunteering, but also the soft skills are really thinking about opening their minds, which are very humanities, seeming geography, history, to different viewpoints where you could, I think we'll come on to, could it be put into different subject areas? So it was really about taking on different ideas and looking at claims and counterclaims as well. But for me, I think the thing that really interested me was, like politics. I also this big thing about, what's teaching politics like to a 12-year-old child? How are we going to make that relevant? So for me, that was a big battle, but one that I really enjoyed. So that's just a brief history of me into the subject.
No, it's great. I mean, good to hear your history and how that came along, and how you got involved, but also a nice general summary, really, of what the subject's all about for those that were wondering. You kind of intimated at the end, and I did expect this to be the case, that there was some resistance within the profession, maybe at that time, and obviously that's maybe continued, against it being a discrete subject, with people saying, well, why don't we just, we're delivering some of these ideas in PSHE. We've worked hard to expand that. Some of it can come into Key Stage 3 history, compulsory up to 14. Some of it can come into Key Stage 4 geography, Key Stage 3 geography, compulsory, and so on. And then obviously kids can do sociology, for example, as a GCSE A level. Why did you come up against resistance against it being a discrete subject, and how did you counter that or deal with it?
Yes, well, I think definitely. I think with anything, people are suspicious of something new. People would maybe look down on it as a new kid on the block. I think with citizenship, there is very distinct knowledge. So it's teaching knowledge of parliamentary democracy. It's teaching knowledge of Britain in the world. So knowledge of the EU as we were when it came out, the United Nations, the Commonwealth. But also some of the knowledge people would say is, well, let's do knowledge of human rights. And some people would like, well, okay. However, in my way, incorrectly, some people, maybe older at school, would say, well, let's stick to more factual based subjects and let's have a discussion in form time or PSC. And I know you'll ask me later about that. Instead of having a discrete subject in an already, of course, very busy timetable curriculum. So yes, I did. And, I used to get a little bit, with friends in the college would take the mickey and I have to stand up for the subject. And, I think looking at myself as an early citizenship teacher, maybe I pushed a lot more on the subject content at the start rather than on the taking part, because I really wanted to prove to my colleagues and the students of the factual importance of this subject. This was before GCSE. When it gets to GCSE, it's quite clear on the knowledge based, democracy, law, media, but a lot of it is also, let's use this to do community involvement. So I got better. I hope I got better at that. But at first I was like, well, hang on a minute. This is, it's kind of, it's interesting. I would imagine art teachers, theatre, music teachers kind of get the same thing. Well, it's not maths, it's not science, therefore it's kind of looked down upon. And that used to really annoy me, because for me, the key about citizenship is, and I'm not saying these subjects don't do it, but citizenship is giving students the knowledge they need to be an active part of society. If I'm a student, perhaps I don't, you could argue, well, why are you teaching pensions? They're 15, 16, but in the future they need that. But I remember teaching, laws on tax, and what was good was doing, and I'll come to this a bit more later, is teaching kids rights about the rights they have in terms of child employment, how many hours they can work, what days of the week they can work. That's their lives. And even though they can't vote, you can't vote till you're 18 in England. Well, elections are every 5 years. That means day after an election, a 13-year-old is actually a voter. It doesn't always work out 5 years, but you get my point. That these kids are, and even if you can't vote, you're still a part of society. You still need to know how to make your voice heard, whether it's through letters or protests, if you're not happy with something in your local town. So yes, in answer, so I'm waffling. I was quite, I felt that battle of some teachers. I know they do it to get a rise out. I mean, it's all banter, a lot of it, but I think people, many a true word is said in jest, probably looked down a bit upon it and probably thought, well, God, we've got PSE, PSHE. Why do we need citizenship? And I'll come to later as to why I believe they're different subjects. With overlap.
Thank you for that, Ollie. A couple of things just occurred to me in response, that clearly the Labour government here is pushing for votes for 16-year-olds. So that's a very significant change. So it goes to your point. They need to know these things quickly. And no more important time in history, I would suggest, in our country, globally, for the kids to know rights and responsibilities as a citizen, particularly in the age of social media, algorithms, we've talked about this before, where life has become far more complex and they're exposed to all sorts of extreme materials, political materials on both across the full political spectrum. So more important, I would suggest, even than it was 25 years ago. My next question would be, you were given the reins and they said, all right, off you go. Here's some money. You're the citizenship guy. Clearly there was a GCSE developed that you've got a framework. Were you given kind of carte blanche to put the Key Stage 3 curriculum together? Was that difficult or exciting in equal measure?
Both. Remember, we were a year in. So when I was on my course, there was a few books around which weren't all bad, but a lot of them, were, they were okay, but we don't want to teach out of textbooks anyway. So yes, basically the head of the school we were in said, right, Key Stage 3. I literally wrote it from scratch. What I liked most about and I think it also came from my own idea on education, but what I liked most about the Institute of Education when I taught was they gave very good ideas of teaching activities in the classroom. So I could build those around my lessons. But I did, as I say, we did have some things. The internet was a lot less, but what I did was created full units on power, politics and media, voluntary sector, you and your community, basically off my own back, searching through the internet. One good thing that I started doing was using local newspapers and building stories from there. Okay, I remember, in our local town about swimming pools, etc. Right, let me link that to a local council. Let me get a lesson from that resource. And I did think some people moaning and they're walking into whatever subject with 50 years of resources, and us poor citizenship teachers were basically making it up as we go along. Probably made a few mistakes along the way. However, obviously as a learning curve, and now I have no qualms about writing a lesson plan or using my initiative, because it was basically thrown at us, and you're on 20 odd lessons a week, not all separate lessons because you repeat lessons within the year group, but obviously, of course, we adapt them accordingly each time. But yeah, it was, learning a trade as well with a new subject. And a year in, because I was 1 year above the student teachers coming in, I was suddenly the trainee teacher, because I worked with about 3 universities on that. Again, real sharp learning curve. I'd done 4 years of EFL in Japan, but it's completely different teaching. But at least I had a little bit of an idea behind my belt. But it was a lot, a very quick time in my career. But yeah, I'm glad I went through it. I enjoyed it. I liked the creativity of it. So it was there were some books, as I say, but we had to basically get out there and make our own schemes of work.
And I think in a previous discussion we had, you described the fact that initially a lot of the kids that you were teaching at Key Stage 4 were kind of almost given to you as those that weren't going to be, we're not academic and we're not going to get grades in other optional subjects. So they were kind of foisted on you and you had to sink or swim with them. That was also, I think, true in the early days, wasn't it? You weren't able to grab the kind of elite academic pupils at the school. Would that be fair to say?
No, that's right. That's right. Now, to be fair to the school, they were really good that they gave it a discreet. But it was a new big thing.
Yeah.
So what the school did was, if you like, the more academic half of the year in Key Stage 3 would do a second language, and then there's the second half would do citizenship. So for a good few years, I don't know, 4 years or so, I only taught the lower ability kids, which was absolutely great. What we also got was in GCSE, it started off as a short course before it went into a full course. So we'd do half RE, half citizenship. And it won't mean much to anybody else, but it will to you. But our school was banded. And at first I'd get the band of students that weren't the students who predicted to get the 5 A to C's, weren't the ones who particularly wanted to still be in school. And then there was me, smiley, happy new teacher, trying to teach them about, the legal systems in the UK, the rights, the diversity of the UK.
Parliamentary process.
Many didn't want to be there, and they hadn't chosen. The thing is, it wasn't an option; it was given to them.
Yeah.
Everyone had to do citizenship in that band, and everyone had to do
Never
RE.
easy. Never easy.
And so I mean, they didn't choose it. So I'm sure whatever subject you would have had some. Now, don't get me wrong, teaching to low ability really helped me. I really liked that. And then at the same time, just because, as I said, we had a second subject, I was teaching the higher end of the academic year in history or geography in Key Stage 3 as well. So I did have everybody. So it gave me a good view of ideas of how to kind of teach knowledge, get people discussing, etc. But yeah, it was difficult.
You worked it to your advantage and the advantage of the subject. I mean, that's how I certainly remember it. And of course, it grew, didn't it? And you really became.
It grew, and we got the whole of Key Stage 3 doing it, and then it became an option in Key Stage 4. But yeah, I think what I mean, I've told you some stories about kids coming in, and the famous lesson I had, the Bin Laden lesson. I think we've spoken about before. And that became part of the, because I was being watched by the head of citizenship, Jamie Hayward. I hope you don't mind me making his name, but yeah, he was one of the big players, a real inspiration in my career, and he used that as a what would you do if for future PGCE cohorts.
Well, I've always thought of it as, among other subjects as well, particularly citizenship, would only be as good in delivery at schools as the people delivering it. And certainly you were a case in point, because you were knowledgeable, you did your research, you were involved and committed. I think it was one of those subjects, and I always thought this at the time, that if you got somebody that was forced to teach it, didn't care about it, was lazy and uninformed, then it could lead to problems. And that really leads me to my next question, really. Those outside the profession, and even within it, might be asking the question at this point, how on earth in this era today, in delivering citizenship, is political and other biases avoided scrupulously? How do teachers avoid their own political biases seeping into teaching and learning and all of that? Because there's got many I can think of a dozen off the top of my head. There's many great dangers in getting this wrong, isn't it? In this
Yeah, there
particular
is.
area. So how is that avoided? What sort of hoops and what sort of systems have you got to go through to avoid that sort of thing?
Well, before I go into that, to kind of link to what you said earlier about why can't it be part of PHE, for example,
Yeah,
and I think you've
yeah,
nailed on the head. Firstly, I think citizenship is more about PSE is more personal. Of course, it's interlinked with how family, friendship issues, but
yeah,
citizenship is all about the person as part of a wider community, and I think there are big differences, and there are parts where you could merge some of it. However, the big problem with PSE, putting it in PSE, is what you've just said is I loved PSE. I like debating. I like hearing kids' stories about their lives.
yeah,
I found quite quickly a lot of teachers see it as an extra hour in the week.
yeah,
They're not interested in it, which is
yeah,
totally fine.
yeah,
And I believe if you put a lot of citizenship into PSE and gave it to teachers who are looking at the lesson 10 minutes before it starts because they've got 5 periods of maths that day or whatever, you're going to get maybe what you are kind of saying, that there could be difficulties in it. You could have teachers not knowing how to teach difficult topics sensitively. So in kind of answer to your question, I would say that you need, I think a lot of it depends on, I think it's good teaching practice. The citizenship specific part is, as a teacher, you don't give your opinion. You
yeah.
play devil's advocate.
Hmm.
And I think what I think I got quite good at was I could have a mock parliament in the room, and I could just go
Yeah,
from side to side to try to pep up the debate, to try to counterclaim if the kids couldn't, and could change my opinion just like that. You've got to, as a teacher, be able to take yourself out. Now, the students will ask you, if I had £1 for every time, who do you vote for, sir? What do you think,
yeah,
Mr. Furnival?
yeah,
I'd have quite a few quid in my pocket. And some of them, and some parents would say it as well. But, it was not allowed to express your opinion on politics to kids. I'm not allowed to influence them. So for me, it would be teaching multiple viewpoints. It would be be fair, whatever political topic I do. As I said, citizenship's best friend is the news. So we might do something on, when I was first in citizenship, the invasion of Iraq was the big thing. So you'd make sure you look at both sides, you'd look at different ideologies. And the good thing for students is you give them their point of view. You say, okay, you're going to be arguing this. Here's 5 arguments, rank them, come back. And the other side will look at those. You give each other the different opinions. So really, you're guiding the debate. You're controlling the variables. And you can trust kids to go outside of them. But what you need to have as a teacher is you need to have very clear boundaries with students. And it takes a while. Can't be done straight away, but you need to have a room where everyone is respected. Now, the difficult thing about citizenship is we could be teaching something that someone might have a view on it based on their faith, based on their background, etc. And you've got to take away their fear of saying something that makes them stand out like a sore thumb. It's different than saying an incorrect maths answer, as I think I said before, and it's to saying an incorrect or deemed incorrect idea on what a law should be like in this country. So for me, it's all about teaching mutual respect. It's all about teaching different viewpoints. It's focusing on systems as well, on what they work in. So, how laws are made, and then build some arguments around that to try to say, well, you can't do that. Again, if I had £1 for every time, well, we should just cut their heads off or whatever for anything. It gets the laugh. And you've got to say, well, look, we need to talk about the laws within the country and the role of the judiciary. So you've got to go back to clear systems with students in citizenship. And I think it's also good to, use evidence-based discussion. If you just said, okay, let's have a discussion on this without, in my opinion, good stories, good factual stories that kids can then use to support their arguments, that they can get them to analyze the source rather than just make up ideas themselves, because some will take it too far and some might want to do it for the laughter, might want to do it to get their own back on someone. And in that, you can then start trying to get in. Well, look, okay, what bias could be in this news article,
Yeah.
this station? Where they're coming from? What do they believe? And that really works well in citizenship, because we looked at, you know, private and public sector. We looked at the BBC. We looked at independent news stories. And actually, there's a new program of study coming out in a year or two, and they're going to be doing a lot more now. Obviously, with the world of AI, with the world of social media, they're actually bringing a lot more in what you can and cannot trust within media. So I think you can angle it from that way. You yourself have got to have your neutrality, professional standards. You're going to be hearing things that you don't agree with, but I've been in lessons where I've totally given an opinion which I don't agree with, because I need to get a counterclaim. And I'll say to kids at the end, look, I'm just saying this is a counterclaim. So you've got to take your own, you can't think, and you've got no right to think that, well, I'm going to teach them the way I believe, because the good thing about Britain is many different opinions are allowed. Now, of course, we have guidelines, and we have things where we have to bring it back. You have to stop students if they're going to you know, offend, etc. But I think, you know, case studies is a good thing to do in citizenship, and I think critical thinking is what we're trying to get students to do: solve problems, give ideas, rather than, you know, trying to. My job as a citizenship teacher isn't to try to get them to produce an opinion that agrees with what I believe is right. It's to make them think about, what's a good argument? What's a strong argument? Why is that strong? Why is that weak? And then you've kind of got them thinking about why a law should or should not be there as well. So for me, if I had to give you one clear answer in the classroom, for me, what I used to like doing was devil's advocate, and I'd get the more able kids to then become put in a chair. Okay, whatever you hear, you're going to disagree with, and you can do your yes no stations, yes no maybe, and then swap the yes no round when they're there. Oh my god, I've got to now think of the different opinion. It's really a matter of, rather than personal, which of course we all want. We want to say what we think, but it's really giving them the answers and getting them to play with the answers and to analyze, to evaluate, to counterclaim with them. And then we can say what we believe, having looked at the evidence. I think that's a good way to do it. But you know, we had a few times where people would cross the line and say something that would be offensive, and you'd have to, you know, we're not talking about classroom management now. You have to think of ways to, you know, explain why that's wrong and how we should work with the community.
It's where obviously having very strong teachers with good relationships with the kids, you know, those trusting relationships comes in. It also makes me realise how brave you would have to be. I think a lot of people, even playing the devil's advocate role, would struggle with that. Even just enunciating things as the devil's advocate that are not part of the script, some people would struggle with. But it also makes me realise, therefore, you've got to have a senior leadership team behind you who knows that you are doing this, just in case a parent, a child, we know this can happen, misconstrued, got the wrong idea, passed it to a parent who Chinese whispers take place, and before you know it, it's a completely different story. You need the senior leadership team to be on the same page and to know exactly the way you're delivering the subject. As far as sources are concerned, obviously in history, Key Stage 3, English, all the way up to Key Stage 3 and into Key Stage 4, kids are should be looking at source materials that are different. So, for example, you know, you never just present, when doing, for example, newspaper bias or articles or how to reach an audience in English lessons, just the Guardian every time. You've got to throw your Telegraph in. You've got to throw your Mail in, because you've got to represent the broad views. It's only lazy teachers that don't do that or don't realise they've got to do it. But interestingly, you've said several times about how it promotes critical thinking, and why that's what role citizenship, and I totally agree, has played and plays in that. I don't know if you knew this, but when they produced the international league tables of what educational systems in each country does well, we know that in Britain, when it comes to maths, we're not at the top of the table. It's countries in your part of the world, South Korea, China, Japan, who are way ahead. Their maths, as you know, is stupendously highly, you know, considered to be the acme of all subjects,
Yeah.
and it's taught very well and very rigorously. We don't do as well. It's not given the same priority. We know that's different culture. Do you know which league table British students come top of? Do you know which one?
I don't, but I'm guessing you're going to say something like thinking skills,
Problem solving.
problem solving. That's great. Yeah,
Collaborative problem solving. British kids, by and large, come out best at.
great.
Whereas without being jaundiced about it, the Far Eastern pupils tend not to thrive. And maybe that's because of maybe it's more deferential and kind of authoritarian, for want of a better word, social structures where
Mm.
you just get told what to do and you do it. Here, we've got quite the opposite. Nobody wants to do as they're told. So maybe strangely, through vehicles like citizenship, that is taking something innate within British society
Yeah.
and accelerating it. Well, that's why I always thought, well, your subject was so good, and we did this obviously in geography too, and English was exactly that, promoting thinking skills, critical thinking, and problem solving. So to round off, some highlights from you in your kind of career of teaching citizenship inside and outside of the classroom. What will be some of the highlights, some of the memorable, most enjoyable things you did?
I think I had this year 8 unit, you and your community. I think I mentioned it earlier,
Yeah.
and I realised we had to teach about local council, etc. And yeah, that can be dry to younger students. You can be like, well, that's adults. So I did this big thing where I made it a questionnaire that have to question each other about how do you feel about your park? Is there a youth club in this town? What's good and what's bad about the town? And we kind of then, from the answers, we got them to start ranking ideas, etc. And at the end of it, the idea was that the students would write their own individual letter to the local council. I'd send them off, and yeah, it was great because the council would write letters back to the kids, and it was, oh God, doesn't mean we're going to get, excuse me, that new youth club, but I've been listened to. And one year, one big thing was the complaints about the police, and one particular year group, I think, they were young teenagers. They were like many at the time. I believe it's a lot less. I believe it's less now from reading in England, but at that time, a lot of them were walking the streets, in the parks, bored and getting into arguments with the police, making a bit of a nuisance of themselves. So on the back of these students' ideas, I said, okay, I've got a little team, got in touch with the local police. We went to the police station in the town and we had a chat with the police, and then they came into school and to every class in that year group, and the police came in and they knew some of the kids, and you could see the kids a bit embarrassed, they liked it, and the police just had a Q&A session with the kids. And I thought, absolutely brilliant. And, I know it's not the first time police have come into school, but this was because of the students asking for it. And they were responding directly to some of the kids' complaints. But the kids, obviously it went through me. It was done professionally. It was done politely. So that was one really highlight, getting the police involvement with the kids. And, whether it made a change long term, I'd like to think it did. But I really enjoyed that. One thing I used to do in our school, we both worked out, was a charity week. So as I said, workings of the voluntary sector, and then we'd get in year groups, we'd find a charity, and then you could merge that in my other role with Gifted and Talented. I'd work with them to, come up with charity events. So for me, it was just creating a charity week. They'd choose a charity, they'd highlight it, and we'd raise a bit of money, and we'd send it off. So that was really great. I also enjoyed when I was in my second school in England. Again, it was another big citizenship school all the way through. It was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, they did World of Work Day, and where we'd get business people to come in and talk about business, what jobs they do, add a little bit of, taxes and whatever, but spoken from real people rather than the teacher that they know. And one year when I was there, we got one of my school friends who came into the school where we'd both gone to the senior school, talking to my kids about how he'd set his business up. Just to me, it was like brilliant. It's like someone real in the community who I knew. It's just not nice to see, oh, brilliant, he's back. And it was a real nice kind of like circle of life moment for me, which I really liked. What we also did in terms of charity as well was raising money for UNICEF one time with sixth formers because they did citizenship in a sixth form, not as an exam. The A level isn't there anymore. It's politics now. There was an A level citizenship, but just they used to do citizenship because the school thought it was so important. And one day we all, as a sixth form, we camped out on the school grounds over the weekend. And that was just really exciting, being intense with a couple of other teachers, but with the kids and doing it all for charity and linking it to the charity they were working for. So that was great. I also loved when we in July at the end of year, we used to do focus days. You may well remember, some people, oh God, just want to get on the summer holiday, but we did the Model United Nations General Assembly.
The old Munga. Yeah, I was going to ask you about
the old Munga. There you go.
Yeah.
So I loved that. I mean, that was a lot of work in preparing, and some form tutors, oh God, but most took it on, and just we used to have this General Assembly where you'd get students kind of just going up and talking about a country they may not have ever thought of a week before, about their opinion on a real world issue. And some of the kids just stand up and be really proud to hear them talking about whatever from the viewpoint of a country. For me, that was really absolutely brilliant, getting them involved, getting them thinking about things they may not have. I am thinking about before we came on, and you were obviously talking about citizenship today. I remember this one student, very bright young lady, who did citizenship GCSE, didn't particularly want to be there. And when she wrote, she said, I've always had a certain respect and admiration. For your ability to encourage others to think. And then she wrote, citizenship is a worthy subject. This was a very bright young lady who didn't particularly want to be at school. I don't think she had anything, she chose citizenship, but, it was like, ugh. And then, I was aware of my attitude, my ignorance, and general fallback. And teachers like yourself encouraged me to achieve. So just something like that from a citizenship point of view, it's like, great, that's all you want. Student to think about thinking. And I believe that student did very well in it. And one other student from the other end of the academic scale, if you like, just wrote, these kids write these nice goodbye cards when she finished year 11. You've always helped and guided us and the whole class on the right and wrong laws within Britain. I thought it was really nice. Like, well, I've learned some laws within Britain, what's right and what's wrong, and I'm going to go off now and use them. So just a few things like that. I think brilliant. That's what you want. Get kids involved. The good thing about GCSE citizenship was a lot of it was coursework. I know some people might say in the end it went up to 50%. It went 40 to 50. It was a lot. Mm-hmm. But it was a real world issue. They had to research a problem. They had to go and do something. Then they had to write it up. And for me, that was absolutely fantastic. And what I really liked was these year groups. One way, we're very busy with all the other GCSE subjects. We used to get them to go to our feeder primary schools. We had 3 feeder schools within the town we worked at, the main schools. And our students would go to those kids and would do lessons on law or something to, grade 6, year 6 kids. So for things like that, just our kids taking action, getting involved in the community. For me, it was like, I really took a lot from it, and I hope the kids got something from it. And I know that some didn't always at the start want to be there, but I think over years, mainly enjoyed it. At least they got a chance, if anything, to have a debate, to learn something new. And as you said, sometimes it did go wrong. I taught them that legally, it's parental responsibility. They could drink alcohol from the age of 5 in private in English law. And of course, I got a parent coming up saying, "You told my daughter she can have a beer on a Friday night." I said, "No, I didn't say that. I'm just saying that the parents must take responsibility." So you taught things, kids would go home and twist it, and you get, not often, but you'd get some parents moaning about it. But for me, it was, I really enjoyed it. And if anyone's out there thinking about getting into teaching, get into citizenship.
Yeah, why not? Sounds like you miss it.
Do you miss it? I mean, funny enough, you're talking about critical thinking. We're coming into the IB, where thinking skills is one of the 5 approaches to learning. It was quite a nice, easy transition. And we have MYP, middle years program. So that'd be your key stage 3, 4 equivalent. And it's called INS, Individuals and Societies. So I still got a chance to teach here. I'd teach geography, history, civics. We could mold it all together. And yeah, we things, it wasn't citizenship in the British way, but it had things like, as I've been talking a bit about voluntary sector, I mean, things like that we could teach in. But the skill base was the same. So yeah, I still, I don't teach as much anymore. But yeah, those citizenship days were the happiest teaching days. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Good. That's good to hear. Yeah, and I've got great sympathy with the story about the parent. I mean, I was a geography teacher, obviously, so I was teaching some kids who came from very devout religious families, where their parents were telling them that God created the earth, 6,000 years ago in a particularly busy week, and we were then showing them rocks that were 50 million years old. So you could see on their faces the conflict that was going to have to be addressed at home at some stage. So
definitely.
Not dissimilar example. Anyway, thanks for that, Ollie. Absolutely brilliant. As I said, there's nobody better out there to tell us about the subject, and there may be teachers already teaching, or people thinking of coming into the profession and thinking, oh, I might be able to find a school because I'm good at that, and I've got the qualifications, I've got the interest.
Yeah,
this might be for me. And who knows in the future how the curriculum will continue to change, and how may this come to be more on stream than even it is today. So thank you very much indeed for all your wisdom and your knowledge. So once again, folks out there, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, press the notification bell, email us, ask us any questions. You might want to ask Ollie any specific questions about citizenship and all of that. And we shall see you all next time. Thank you for watching. So Ollie, you obviously a week away from the Easter holidays here. Exactly the same over there. You're going to get a break soon.
Yeah, got next week off, but unfortunately, I'm Japanese school, so it's a quick turnaround. New Year starts in April, so policy updates are being finished and T's crossed and I's dotted, whatever. So yeah, but I will do. I'll have a bit of a break as it warms up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Nice to see you again, mate. You take care.
Cheers. Take care.
Soon.
See you later. Thanks all.